Episode 35 of Fresh Freedom with Rep. Eric Burleson and Rep. Bob Onder. Trump gets certified, Laken Riley Act passes in the House, and so much more. Welcome to the Fresh Freedom Podcast, featuring freedom-focused representatives who are fighting for conservative values and defending your constitutional rights. I'm Nate Lucas, and tonight, joining Representative Eric Burleson is another fellow Missourian just sworn in on Friday, Representative Dr. Bob Onder from Missouri's 3rd District. Congressman, it's great to see both of you.
I am so glad that he's up here.
All right.
I can't tell you. The moment that that seat opened up, I was so excited because Bob was someone that served in the trenches with me in the Missouri Senate. We both have battle scars for all the things that the fights that we were in. Sometimes we fight each other.
Rarely.
Very rarely.
We were usually on the same side.
Yeah, so I'm super thrilled that you're up here.
It's quite the delegation that Missouri has assembled here. I mean, so many of you have worked previously in the General Assembly and now to make it to Washington, D.C.
Well, we did. We not only overlapped, 4 years in the Missouri Senate, but I was in the House, I believe, 4 years in the Senate 4 years while you were in the House. Yeah. In fact, I helped get SEPA across the line. Not SEPA, but rather constitutional carry across the line one year. So, it was, we had a lot of fun working together.
So, I mean, as a freshman, Eric, you went through this 2 years ago, but is it like your first day of school? I mean, when everybody's there, even on Monday for the certification, are you like, where do I sit? What do I do here?
Yeah, an upperclassman hazing you, a lot like the first day of school, yeah.
So Monday, though, was the first opportunity for both of you to be a part of a certification of a president, and the 47th president of the United States, Donald Trump. It was snowing outside. It was kind of a nasty day in Washington, D.C., and Eric, you filmed a video and said it's a great day to be in Washington. Beautiful day to be up here.
Well, I mean, it was a pretty, mild day. I mean, as far as the activity, especially compared to 4 years ago. But it was, it's a new day in America, right? Like, you can see hope coming just around the horizon.
No question. And especially when we contrast what we're facing now with unified government, with a Republican House, a Republican Senate, and of course, most of all, Donald Trump in the White House. If the shoe were on the other foot, we would be in a world of hurt. We would have Kamala Harris just running the paper shredder with our Constitution. We would see the end of due process, the end of rule of law. So it's really a bright day in America. I am really hopeful.
You have to almost feel a little bit, though, for Kamala Harris, who presided over the certification. I saw Jimmy Fallon make the joke that, dry January's over because after something like that, you're going to need a cocktail. I mean, you guys are in the room, right? Yeah. Like, she's sitting up there presiding over the J.D. Vance is right there in the front row. Yeah. Can you imagine what that felt like?
Yeah, I once heard a story, I don't know whether it is true or apocryphal, but that Jimmy Carter was talking to George McGovern, and Carter asked McGovern, when do you ever stop going over in your mind your defeat for president of the United States? And McGovern said to Jimmy, "I'll let you know." So I am sure Kamala will. It was a tough day for her, but a good day for our country.
How about you? I mean, just being in there and watching her preside over this. Yeah, did she look frustrated?
I think she tried to put on a very sterile look, right? Like, she basically tried to keep it all in, no emotion, like, don't display anything. For the most part, I think that she did a decent job in doing that. And honestly, I wouldn't want to be in her shoes. I would not want to go through that. And I think if she had a drink before going in, I wouldn't have blamed her.
Sometimes it takes the edge off, as they say, so speaking. This was also the first time that congressional Democrats did not raise an elector challenge to a Republican winner of a presidential election going all the way back to George H.W. Bush's victory back in 1989. And if you listen to what Kamala Harris said after the certification, she came out and said, this is what should be the norm. one of the most important pillars of our democracy is that there will be a peaceful transfer of power. It's fascinating how the Democrats have used this opportunity to show that, remember, we're still the party that has the peaceful transfer of power. They will never let January 6th of 4 years ago die.
Yes. Well, we did have a peaceful transition of power in 2020. There was a riot by some knuckleheads, perhaps with some provocateurs egging them on. But we've always had peaceful transitions of power. But look, the party of democracy, the Democrats, they are the ones who tried to subvert this election with the endless persecutions of Donald Trump, trying to keep Donald Trump off the ballot. The media disinformation, they are the purveyors of the disinformation. Of course, the Hunter laptop suppression back in 2020. But look, I think Kamala Harris did a reasonable job yesterday, and I commend her for that.
You called Donald Trump the comeback king, Eric, and I think it's fitting. And if you just think about everything he's endured over the last 4 years, and then to deliver the win that he did, not just the electoral vote, but the popular vote, it's really a tremendous story. At some point, history might look back and recognize this guy as a political hero rather than the demon they try to make him out to be.
I think he absolutely will be. And I think that this next period for Trump I think he's going to get the honeymoon that he never got in his first term, right? I think that he saw how previous presidents had come in, and that generally speaking, they get, the first few hundred days, everyone kind of, gives them that honeymoon. His first 100 days, he was fighting, investigations, bogus investigations. He was, lawsuits, all of that stuff. He was fighting from the very beginning, and he never really those first 4 years. That's why I think the Democrats are in a different position now, because there's nothing to gain in attacking him now, right? And so never forget, at one point in time, George W. Bush was Hitler,
Yes.
right? The Democrats called him Hitler. He was the closest thing to the devil on the planet. And then when he was no longer the candidate, it was Mitt Romney,
Yes.
I believe, after that.
Yes.
Then, or was it McCain? I think it was
McCain, then Romney. McCain, then Romney.
Each one of them,
Yes.
was basically, each time it's like, oh, this guy is now worse than George W. Bush.
Yes.
Or Romney was worse than McCain, right? And I think that they're keeping their powder dry, because they know that the fight for the next president is going to start pretty quick, and they're going to have to create that narrative.
Yeah, and an example of that, I think, of the Democrats realizing that what they are selling, the American people are not buying, was today the vote on the Laken Riley Act, which would require ICE to detain and deport illegal aliens and give states causes of action against federal officials who won't do their job.
And not just any illegal aliens that have committed crimes here.
Have committed crimes, committed crimes.
Further crimes.
And so, yes, in addition to the crime of being illegally present in our country. And last year when that bill came up, 38 Democrats, to their credit, voted for the Laken Riley Act. Today, 49 voted for the Laken Riley Act. So I think Democrats are realizing that being radically left does not sell. The American people aren't buying that. Not only is it not selling to the American people at large, but even some of their historic voting blocs, like African American and Hispanic voters, are drifting the way of the Republican Party and of the MAGA movement.
I still find it unbelievable that 159 Democrats could vote against H.R. 29 today, the Laken Riley Act. I mean, how do you answer a question of why? I mean, you don't have to. Both of you voted yes, but it's just astonishing.
Every Democrat who spoke today gave their deepest sympathies to the Laken Riley family, but didn't want to do anything about it, didn't want to do anything to make sure the next Laken Riley not happen. Again, Laken Riley was a 22-year-old nursing student in Georgia who was brutally murdered by an illegal alien who committed not one but multiple crimes and should never have been president of the country. But the Democrats are okay with that. They feel bad for the family, but they're not going to do anything to turn it around and change it. So that's sad. But some Democrats saw the political handwriting on the wall and said, well, maybe we better moderate our position just a little bit.
Wow. Well, I think that is one of the main goals for the 119th Congress, is to try to prove to the American people that we are the party that can actually move the ball forward and pass America First legislation. And that, now the ball's in your guys' court to try to push that agenda forward. And I think maybe for the Democrats that would be frightening, but I think for a group of strong conservatives, particularly you both, I think that's something that you look forward to achieving.
Yeah, this is why you run for office. This moment is the moment. We will never have another opportunity like this to right-size government and course correct. We're going to have to make up for the sins of all of our predecessors in the past and their spending sins, but it has to be done. It has to be done, and we're going to have to do the hard thing. It's going to be painful. I think it's not as painful for us. I mean, we're used to making cuts. We did that in Missouri. But, look, if we're going to go through this reconciliation process, we need to make sure that we, for once, things are not going to be business as usual in this town. We're not going to blow the deficit and the debt, add more debt on top of the debt that we already have. We need to start shrinking the deficit, dramatically shrinking it, and also in addition, do a lot of the things that might add growth, like the energy policies, deregulating the energy, drill baby drill, all of that stuff, pulling back on the regulatory state, unleashing all of the brilliant businesses in this country to be successful, continue to entice businesses to move back or reshore back into the United States. So there's a lot of growth opportunities. That, paired with spending cuts, I think will start to get us down the road towards deficit neutrality.
Donald Trump, one of the most, I think, fun things about the guy are these press conferences that he hosts. They're wild, they're entertaining, they go on for hours, they get combative at times. And then you hear some things that are like, wow, that's a great idea. Why don't we change the name of the Gulf of Mexico to the Gulf of America?
Yeah.
Why don't we consider purchasing Greenland? Why don't we do some of the other things that getting back the Panama Canal?
Yes.
I think he's so innovative. And who knows if he's just putting this out there as bait for people to kind of latch on and say, you're crazy, we're never going to do this.
Yeah.
But at least he's thinking outside the box. That's precisely what Washington, D.C. desperately needs.
Yes, it's ironic that President Carter is lying in state. One of the issues that I'll tell you most incensed me when I was in college was the Panama Canal Treaty that President Carter signed with Panama, and Ronald Reagan made it an enormous issue in the 1980 election. And we don't any longer control the Panama Canal, but unfortunately the Chinese control Panama Canal, which is exactly what Ronald Reagan and many of us were predicting many years ago. So what goes around comes around. I hadn't really given a whole lot of thought to our issues in Panama, and that perhaps the way to solve it is to tear up that treaty and say, as Ronald Reagan once said, we bought it, we paid for it, it's ours.
Well, I was looking at that treaty a little bit earlier today, and one of the issues that came up was that Jimmy Carter thought he was correcting historical injustice, which just makes me roll my eyes. Jimmy Carter viewed the Torrijos-Carter treaties as correcting a historical wrong and improving U.S. relations with Latin America. This is all the way back in the late 1970s. Yes. So they were already setting the groundwork for this historical injustice that now their whole party seems to be built on.
Well, as the UN ambassador Jeane Kirkpatrick once famously said at an RNC convention, the Democrats always blame America first. And that was really an unfortunate aspect of Jimmy Carter's presidency. He blamed us for the Panama Canal, even though we built it and paid for it. He blamed us because we had an ally in the Shah of Iran in Iran. And what did he do? He gave away the Panama Canal, and now the Chinese control it, and we have the worst state-sponsored terror in the world in Iran. So no, bad policy has big consequences, and I think traditionally Republican presidents have not always made the right decision in foreign policy, but Donald Trump's presidency, I believe, in foreign policy will be head and shoulders above Joe Biden's.
I want to get to the abolish the ATF Act, but just quickly on Greenland, Eric, do you think, controlling that Arctic region as a potential trade route, there are a lot of interesting aspects to that wild idea of perhaps purchasing Greenland?
Yeah, I think it would be. I think it is great that Trump thinks outside the box. The first time he suggested that in his first term, I thought, I kind of just laughed a little bit, but the more that you think about it, he's trying to think of what, big things that are possible, right? And so changing the dynamic, changing the conversation. Look, this country, one of the things that we discussed in our conference meeting over the weekend, one of the things that was brought up is the fact that the federal government has occupied so much land that is really that's put out of productive use, especially in the western states. Mm-hmm. We need to redo the Homestead Act, start setting aside some land for people to settle, especially around Las Vegas, very, high value land area there, and let the American people continue to grow and build in America. Take the money from the sale of a lot of that property and go buy Greenland, right? Or at the end of the day, or pay off some of our debts. But at the end of the day, I like the fact that he's thinking outside the box. I think it's great.
I'm right there with you. The Abolish the ATF Act, introduced on Tuesday of this week. Eric, you've been leading this. You took the bill in the 118th Congress after Representative Matt Gaetz resigned. I know Lauren Boebert has been kind of co-leading with this. Dr. Andre, you co-sponsored this today. This is an agency that is way out in front of their heels, and they are stripping Americans their constitutional rights left and right.
Yeah, I'm really honored to do that. When you first come up here, it's different than the state legislature, where sometimes if somebody's sponsoring a bill, it's not. You can sponsor the similar language or something, sometimes the identical language, and it's not that big of a deal. Up here, it's a big deal, and so I wanted to. I love this bill concept, and when Matt Gaetz sponsored it, I thought, okay, well, I'll just jump on his bill and I was the first co-sponsor. So now when he left, I reached out to him and said, can I, take possession of that bill? And he was very gracious to let me do that. So I'm excited. I think that it's a topic we need to have. We need to move the Overton window on this topic, and this helps to do that. Like when you start questioning and you get people to start questioning, what does this agency even do? Or how much overlap is this agency with all the other law enforcement agencies that we have to deal with on the federal level and the state level, right? So they overlap nearly everything your local state highway patrol, police, sheriff, all of those. What they do is it's another layer of bureaucracy where they're trying to dictate to our local law enforcement what they ought to be enforcing. And I think that when you put that all into perspective, you realize this is an agency that probably, if it closed down tonight, no one would notice tomorrow.
And Congressman Burleson is the perfect sponsor for this bill. In the Missouri legislature, no one led on Second Amendment issues like Congressman Burleson. On constitutional carry, the Second Amendment Preservation Act, the Castle Doctrine.
Stand your ground.
Stand your ground. Eric led on all those issues. We wouldn't have those important protections for the Second Amendment in the Missouri statute books if it weren't for Eric Burleson. So
I appreciate
thank
that.
You.
And what was interesting about each one of those, the first time you file that bill, the attitude in the building or generally amongst the press even is, oh, that's never going to happen, right?
Yes, even among your fellow Republicans.
Right.
And then 2 Lincoln days later, they're taking credit for Eric's bill.
Yeah.
Wow.
And that sometimes it takes big ideas like that takes time to cultivate and for people to mull it over and then air it out, and especially to hear back feedback from their community, go back in their district, and when people say, why aren't you passing
Darn
that bill,
right.
right?
Yeah.
Suddenly you start building momentum.
As some people have pointed out, alcohol, tobacco, and firearms would be better suited for like a name of a business rather than a
Absolutely.
So, well, excellent, gentlemen. Great insight as always. Thank you very much.
Thank you.
Be sure to follow their official accounts on X at Rep Bob Onder and at Rep Eric Burleson. And to all of the Patriots listening, if you found today's conversation insightful, show some love, smash the like button, subscribe, share it with your friends, and you can catch Fresh Freedom Podcasts on Spotify, Apple, YouTube, X, and Rumble. Stand strong, stay informed, and keep fighting for freedom.